Hi, this is True Diligence.
P.I.
Proud sponsor. If you're looking for a job
in the cannabis industry,
you know how fierce the competition is. Think of the character you'll demonstrate by showcasing your credentials at the beginning of the hiring process. A simple, yet affordable way to show employers you're the clear choice. Visit our website at truediligence.com.
Move your resume to the top.
Open up, Colorado. It's 420. Time to grind and burn.
This is not your son's stoner show.
Welcome back to the Cannabis Community Project. This is Brainstorm, here once again bringing you your weekly podcast from the CCP studios high up in Denver, Colorado. Here exploring the business side of this newly emerging Colorado economy, focusing on the business, the patient, the retailer, to the geek in the garage creating that next innovation in cannabis. This is the first media platform to help fellow cannapreneurs build sustainable business models while living the lifestyle. Are you feeling fired up? Are you feeling energized? If not, I want you to stand up, jump around, throw some cold water in your face, because you're going to need to be awake for this week's show. Today, we have on a very interesting but very serious and very powerful person. Powerful because he's an individual who's willing to lay his own life, his own freedom, and everything that could potentially be held dear in life on the line to support a belief, a cause, some action. We're going to talk about activism today, and we're going to talk about yet another person whose life was drastically affected by activism, but not activism like I'm out in front of a building kicking in windows and destroying things. Activism like I tried to supply sick and dying patients with medicine from one state to another. And for that, I spent 3 years of my life in jail. That kind of activism. That's right, we're going to hear about it. And you're going to be inspired, but you're also going to want to learn about what you can do to get involved and help this industry and be a true participant, not just a noisemaker. We don't need noisemakers. We need true participants. Now, this is a bit of a contrast in last week's show. If you remember, Jay Moore was on last week's show. If you didn't know that, well, now you do, and you're going to want to go back and take a listen. Very funny, but Jay was serious too. You know, he can be serious when he needs to be, and he was talking about some very serious issues. But definitely very funny guy. Great interview. I'm pretty sure it was my first headlining celebrity. I know a lot of you I've interviewed have been demi-celebrities, but for my first headlining celebrity, go back and take a listen. Let me give you just a couple minutes right now, just for a good balance of the show. Let's take just a few minutes, take a chuckle and a laugh with last week's show, and then slide right on into this week's show. Here we go. Last week with Jay Moore and our short-term memory flashback.
Hey, what's up, dude?
Hey, what's going on, Jay? Hey, can I just say right off the bat, you are surprisingly accessible.
Yeah, it's probably going to get me murdered like Selena one day. But here we are.
You still seem like a very genuine person.
Well, I try to be. At the end of the day, I mean, it is a business. If we're just going to speak honestly, the more I interact with fans of stand-up comedy, the more I get people to come out to the show. Like, anybody can go to a town and just kill and leave town. But can you keep going to that town 5 times, 6 times? Can you do that same theater for 10 years, once a year? And I can, and I'm proud of it. This is a service industry. I'm no better than a waiter. If I mess up the food, you don't have to come back to my restaurant. So I'm going to make sure you like the meal, and I want that tip. I listened to your show, and you put that ad right up at the top of the podcast before any of the other ones. I was flattered, man. You talk about putting your name on it, you put your name on it. Any pothead out there with a business that's listening right now, any human being that's a middleman that you can cut out, cut them out. That's why I don't have a publicist. You don't even know what people are blocking. And people will get in the way of everything you do. You got to identify those people. You got to get rid of them. As Chuck D said, you can't change the people around you. You got to change the people around you. No, I used to smoke a ton of pot.
Okay.
Like I was like an ace every 4 days guy. And I know to a lot of your listeners are like, pussy. But yeah, I wrote my first book, Gasping for Airtime. I smoked. I got so high before I wrote that book. But, as far as pot being medicinal, like a warm bath is medicinal. You don't have to you know what I mean? You don't have to legislate it. So I think it's all upside down, the legislation. But, I played baseball at a very high level high. I wrestled high. I did a lot of stuff high. Because when you're high, everything seems better high. Hey, let's go to the grocery store. Let's go to the grocery store high. It's really, I will say this. You can't teach hustle, and you cannot teach ambition, and you can't teach action. Those are genetic, and you're either born with it, and sometimes it's just the way your hard drive is installed. So if you're out there getting after it, no matter how wacky your business is, if you're passionate about it and you get after it, and repetition is the number one word to take from this entire conversation, repetition. There's so many different ways that you can earn a living, but if it's the non-traditional way to earn a living, just repetition. And if you don't have that hustle, if you're sitting around on the couch with a joint like, why won't anybody call me and answer my want ad? You've got to just get after it. But you really also got to keep your radar open and realize there are other ways to get that money. Don't leave money on the table, but also realize it's not like a bake sale with one table and 3 brownies sitting on a plate. Look behind you, look over on the side. There's a lot of tables, bro. It's like a flea market out there. You got to figure out a way to get that cash. Make the hustle work for you.
Yeah, Tracy Morgan, I know 15 terrorists. I got them all pregnant. We had big daughters with doodle pampers. Got pregnant in G-Town. Yeah, I'm going to Boulder, goddammit.
There you have it, the great and funny Jay Moore. You can find him at fakemustache.com, jmoore.com. Find his podcast, more stories, his radio show, more sports, his books, his movies, Wikipedia. It's all out there. Jay Moore on the Cannabis Community Project. Hey Cannapreneurs, this week's show is sponsored by Dairy Berry's Recording Studio, located in Arvada, Colorado with affordable rates. Mark is well experienced and will make your show, music, or any audio you have sound great. Take a look at dairyberriesrecordingstudio.com. Very good. Let's move on to this week's show. We have J-Day STATZER. You can find him on Facebook under J-J-A-Y, Day, D-A-Y, STATZER, S-T-A-T-Z-E-R. Political activist, political prisoner at CuresNotWars.org with hyphens in between the words there. This is this week's news. This is J-Day STATZER.
What happens when you call the cops? Say what? This is what happens when you call the cops. Come on. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot.
I'm sick of people being victimized by criminal cops. Psychopathic predators terrorizing neighborhood blocks. Equipped with pepper spray, mace, cuffs, tasers, and glocks. They like serial killers acting out subliminal thoughts. Forget what you taught. These cops have got a license to kill. Witness intimidation means that they can use it at will. Code of silence means that the pigs will never let out a squeal. And if they go to court, they know the judge will make them a deal. For real, that's why they stopping me, locking me up and stopping me, confiscating my property, talking in my demography, making the poor commodities, profiting off of poverty, enforcing policies, supporting prison economies. Yeah, no one makes money when the violence stops. Hate and brutality's the way to make a criminal crop. Blood in the gutters, how the rich butter they bread at the top. And that's why this is what happens when you call the cops. Come on.
This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot.
911, what's your emergency?
I'm mixed up in the system and these pigs is trying to murder me. They mace me, they tase me, they trained them to hate me. Degrade and
This is a true activist, one who is not doing it for money, not doing it as a job. He's not a lobbyist. He's not out there because he's bored with nothing else to do. And he's not just trying to get high and looking for an excuse to support a cause. He's out there being a real activist, helping patients in a true medicinal way. And as a result of that, he has put his own freedom on the line and become a political prisoner. Learn about it. Learn about how a man loses 3 years of his life. This isn't just some random news story we're doing. This isn't This Week in News. This isn't an article about a person far away in a hypothetical town getting a hypothetical charge. We're going to hear it firsthand from an actual individual whose life is affected forever, probably for the worse on his part. But as a result of that, it plants a seed that grows the positive in the work he does for us.
Get the grenades, pull a pin, throw it in the crib, blow him away.
There's a homeless guy camping here.
We'll tell him to pack. When he gets up and starts leaving, shoot the bum in the back.
This guy rolled through a stop sign.
That's drugs for sale. Get some doctors to rape him, send him a bill in the mail.
We got a black man knocking on a white woman's door.
With 10 shots, point blank, he ain't gonna knock no more. Look, the problem starts at the academy. New cadets are indoctrinated with a military mentality. With them as the soldiers and us as the people they battling. We're either collateral damage or combat fatalities. Either way, the reality's that it's not gonna stop. Cause this is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. Come on, this is what happens when you call the cops.
This is what happens. Say what happens when you call the cops. Come on. This is what happens when you call. Yeah. This is what happens. Happens when you call the cops. This is what happens. Call when you all get shot. Bang.
Well, I certainly got a lot to say, but I'll pare it down for just a conversation that we can have today, and we can always talk more later. This is Jay STATZER with Cures Not Wars, and I'm a rally organizer myself. I've been involved in hemp probably since Jack Harris Hemp Tour, really, but most seriously since 2000, where I helped get dozens of brands of hemp food and clothing into mainstream stores where they hadn't already existed here in the Midwest.
And you're out in Kansas?
I am I'm a citizen of Michigan and Nebraska right now. The Michigan is my original state, but Nebraska is kind of my unwilling adopted home as well. You see, I was one of the 3 people that got caught in Nebraska trying to transport cannabis medicine from one legal dispensary in Arizona to another one in Washington, D.C. This was 4 years ago. I just got done doing 3 years in prison for it. I'm a rally organizer myself in Michigan. Was the original originator of the Detroit edition of the Worldwide Cannabis March every first Saturday of May. From the start date of it being in Grand Circus Park every first Saturday of May, we've been going 15 years now. And one of the proudest things was the fact that I had the crew behind me to where when I did time, the rally didn't just fall apart because I wasn't there. And that was, there was another radio show Steve Green has where I was hearing it on the Detroit Liberal Talk Station from my little AM radio in the cell yard, in the prison yard in Ohio. So to know that my event was going on and having proof in my own ear that it was going on was just a real happy thing for me. But when I'm not organizing my own event, speaking at my own event, I help out at other events. See, High Times Magazine used to have these people called the Freedom Fighters, and they would go to all the rallies, and they would be the ones that would help set up the tables and run the tables and, do a bucket drive or, put up posters and, clean the site afterwards. And nowadays, we have lots of people that are willing to put on events. And, when you look at the city list of the Global Marijuana March from Cures Not Wars, you'll see that. But what we need is people to staff these events. We need people that are willing to not just hang out, but to be there and serve a purpose. Sometimes it's just as simple as keeping an eye on the place or standing by a camera or some other piece of equipment. And sometimes we need someone with some more talent who can work an information table. And if you don't have the staff, it's a hell of a lot of work for the person putting the event together.
Is this the position you were working in when you were arrested?
Yeah, I was still a rally organizer. But the thing about it is when you're involved in political work York as much as I've been over the decades, you start to get a little frustrated about the slow progress. And sometimes you end up taking a little direct action. And that's what I did, helping Dana Beal, who goes back in the marijuana movement as long as there's been a marijuana movement, that basically the patients in Washington, D.C. had been cheated twice. First, they got cheated where Bob Barr wouldn't let them count the vote in Congress, and it basically squelched the will of the people in D.C. to have medical marijuana. And then they allowed it, but the people in D.C., they all live in an apartment, and if you want to get a commercial space to grow in, it's just huge money. Mm-hmm. And so the patients had the right to the medicine, but they had no access to the medicine. And basically what was required was to have affordable medicine brought in from other places where there's more space to create it. It took activists to run that gauntlet through the illegal states like Nebraska. If you had a dealer do it instead, he'd mark it up. There again, you're pricing the people out of their right to their medicine. We took $10 a gram medicine and was providing it for $2 a gram. That's what I've been telling people, is that I'm back, and I'm back with a vengeance, because all I was doing was trying to help the patients, and what I was doing was legal in the state I started and legal in the state I was going to end up in. And so what is it the business of other states along the way to interfere in that? For instance, Nebraska has a tax stamp law still, one of the few states that hasn't had that struck down yet. And so what are they going to do? They're going to tax me for cannabis that patients from the East Coast bought out on the West Coast. They have no jurisdiction to tax anything, but that's part of the thing. It's the money they want. So I'm back with a vengeance. Like I say, I'm going to tell people that this is still going on, that Obama laid off the patients, but he's not laying off the caregivers. He's not laying off the clinics. In Detroit, police were going to these dispensaries and doing smash and grab robberies where, they'll go after the plants, but what they really want is the cash register.
They were stealing, basically.
They call it smash and grab, like when you go into a jewelry store and just bust the place up and bust the counters and grab the jewelry out from inside them. Yeah. It's what the cops are doing, except with pot and with money. And it's disgusting. And it tells me that I was right when years and years ago, before they had the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, I said, if you did a marijuana-only amendment, all you do is put the patients and the people that love them into the front lines. Mm-hmm. And fast forward, that's what they're doing right now. They have a team of officers that are going around stalking people on Facebook and getting legitimate medical marijuana cards from the state and then busting people posing as patients. That's how bad it is. We're not going to have this problem solved until we legalize cannabis for everybody, not just for some people.
So you were caught up as a victim in the sense that you were transporting medicine from a legal state to another legal state, but got caught in the middle in a state that did not recognize any of those laws.
Right, and so you can't defend yourself.
So you were arrested So you were arrested on traffic.
Yeah. In Nebraska, I did. I got arrested twice. In Nebraska, it was 180 pounds. Had it been, 10 pounds more, so it would have been a federal case.
That's the cutoff, 200?
Somewhere around there, yeah. It's a shifting scale, I think every decade they got to ratchet it back because there's just so much more pot coming through.
Mm-hmm. Overall, that's not a huge amount. 200 pounds, 180 doesn't feel like a trafficker, as how we imagine from movies of people moving semi-trucks and in barges full of crates and tons of product.
Well, when you see the victory photo of the police posing around the bales, it looks a lot larger than it is, that's for sure. But it fits snugly underneath the hide of bed.
It reminds me of the movie, you've probably seen it, Super Troopers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of the movie Super Troopers when they bust the reefer and they're excited and posing around it and taking pictures because it means more funding for the department and media coverage. Mm-hmm. It's almost satirical in the sense. It's kind of a joke, but not too funny for the victims that get caught up in the middle.
Well, and this is the thing, too. There's some radio shows, like liberal radio shows I really like, and they're going good until they get across the topic of cannabis, and then all they can do is giggle about it. They can't really say anything serious. Now, to me, this issue stopped being funny about the time the government started killing my friends over it.
Yeah.
I was part of the whole Rainbow Farm scene here in Vandalia, Michigan. Vandalia, Michigan had this place called Rainbow Farm. It was a private property owned by a guy named Tom Crosland, who had a life partner named Roland Rahm, who his partner Rolly had a son involved too. And they were a happy family living there on the farm, and all they were doing that got them such negative attention was they would allow activists like Max Robinson and Doug Lineback to put on events to legalize cannabis. And they were great, huge events, 10,000 to 40,000 attendance events. And we really got a big boost in the movement from that because we were able to get access to people and recruit them and to do things like the ballot initiative process and teach people how to go door to door with a pen and a notepad. And so they did it year after year after year, and the cops tried as well as they could to infiltrate it and hassle it. And we had, the early years had protection from the Michigan militia, doing our security and such, and they were able to keep the state police at bay. But when the militia left, when a lot of the people in the movement left, they were wide open. And basically, Tom got assassinated on his own property just because he allowed the cannabis movement to come in and do these events that were starting to change things here in Michigan.
Assassinated by who? The police department?
Well, Tom was shot by the FBI, an FBI sniper that was staking out his house, and he walks by him to go to a neighbor's house to get a coffee pot and some coffee because, he had good relations with all his neighbors. And on the way back, this guy kind of ambushed him. And Tom allegedly made the mistake of raising his weapon. And, you raise your weapon at a federal agent, he's going to shoot to kill, and he's going to hit you on that first shot. So if you raise a weapon like that, you damn well better be prepared to use it. But I don't think Tom was. Tom was thinking that he could stand off the guy, back out of the situation. And then a couple days later, Raleigh is ready to give himself up on the condition that he's allowed to see his kid and have a few last words with his kid before they haul him off. And they come in with a Bradley armored vehicle instead of his son, and the Michigan State Police shoot him and shot him up and mutilated his body. And that's what they do in the war on drugs, even in a supposedly liberal state like a blue state like Michigan. And Jennifer Granholm was state's attorney, I believe, during those times when investigations were going on. She was rubber stamping everything. And so when it was time for her to get reelection to governor, all the pot smokers said no and sat on their vote. And now we have this ridiculous fascist Republican governor who's partying out the state like a junk car right now.
That's pretty intense. I don't think people realize the extremities that law enforcement is taking this in other states. And even here in Colorado, despite the laws and the changing environment, I mean, we've had people on before in the past that have talked about their personal stories of being arrested and their lives being affected. What you're getting into here is much bigger because it's not just about an individual story. It's about a systematic operation that's in place. Either they're colluding together.
They'll try to keep a lid on this when they see it breaking loose.
Right. So
they find any backdoor method they can to re-legalize pot. And it's the same thing they do with alcohol. There used to be a lot of state commerce from people coming up to the nightclubs close to the Michigan side of the Michigan border from Indiana. But when the cops started targeting Indiana plates for DUIs, they cut that off, and now you can't find a single club there. Yeah, re-legalizing alcohol was the point I'm making there.
Right, and this is the same story we're hearing with Colorado license plates crossing the border, going through Nebraska and so forth.
Yeah.
Very
Second time I got arrested in Ohio, I had an Ohio plate on my rental car, and that was part of the reason cited as why I was stopped. So they were doing that 4 years ago.
They openly said, this is why we're stopping you?
That was part of the reason. They had a laundry list of real specious reasons, but I guess when they're all stacked up together, it's supposed to add up to probable cause. And that was part of the tapestry. They had things like excessive luggage in the car,
right?
Things like that were reasons to pull me over. It's kind of, everybody should read their own arrest reports because it's amazing information.
Well, I mean, this is why I preach to everybody that if there's two things that we all need to do, is we all need to have legal representation, or at least money for retainers for lawyers, and we need to have filming documented at all times in our vehicles and our persons. There needs to be documentation 24/7, and we need to have quick and effective legal access at all times.
That's true.
I think in the world we're in now, and if we're going to be in this industry like we choose to do, I mean, I choose to be in this industry. Well, that's not. I'm 80% choosing to be in this industry, and 20% I'm kind of forced to be in this industry. And there's two things I think about every day: is am I saving to put retainers on legal help when needed, and what am I doing to document my own actions for my own protection? And this is, I like sites like Cop Block and Police to Police Community and other Facebook and various communities that specifically.
When I travel west, I will have a live camera with me at all times as well, because that's true. I'm one of those people that films the police too. I went all the way back to when I used to have a tape recorder, and I've seen cops back away from my car because I put a tape recorder on the roof. So there's a real power in media. Now the thing about it is, and what you're doing needs to be applied organizationally as well. Groups like Normal, and to have groups of people that are going to provide these kind of supports for people who are taking risks like I do. It's again, you got to have a personal security system, because it's not the happy days when we were supposed to be cannabis ambassadors anymore. Now we have to be soldiers now, because we have to have a personal security system, and we also have to have the camaraderie that soldiers have. Not so much a social thing anymore. It's a real serious thing, and people got to be more serious in how they help each other and not so much worried about position and their feelings and whatnot.
Now, are you advocating soldier in a metaphorical sense, or are you saying
the freedom fighters? Yeah, the freedom fighters who would staff events. The big problem we have, I suppose, tens and hundreds of members. How come they can't come and put up a booth or run a table or pick up trash or do something to help run help staff the event? Right. That's what we need now. We need people to get active. I've always said as an organizer of events that if you don't make it as safe, fun, and easy as possible for the average Joe to participate in the movement, the apathy is so thick right now that they just won't even come out and do anything. But once you get them voting with your butt, once you get them showing up at the events on a regular basis, they'll start looking around, and the ones that have some talent, the ones that have some get up and go, we're going to say, hey, is there something I can do to help? And then they're recruitable.
I experience this quite often also. Do you feel that more people need to be personally affected with an arrest or a family member or somebody being affected, or is there something else that we can do to get people involved without having to go to the extreme of somebody personally being affected in some way?
Right, because when you have like a family member that's getting busted, that's a parallel to, when you have a family member that comes out gay and all of a sudden you care and all of a sudden you're motivated to do something about it. The thing is, that can cut one of two ways. Either you get motivated or you collapse and you fold up. Or you get paranoid. You're, I can't do anything now. Now my brother's on the line because, the cops are everywhere. It takes people who have that sense of duty to overcome the fear. But the main thing, too, is a lot of people are trying to make it about money and about saying, we got to have vendors to raise money. And from Washington, D.C. Smoke Inn to Seattle Hemp Fest, I've never seen an event even break even. So these events can't possibly be about making money. They all have to be completely nonprofit, educational, outreach programs to bring people into the movement. Mm-hmm. That's really their only mission, their only usefulness. They're not pep rallies. And I've dealt with people who think events are like pep rallies where you all come to like a state capitol and go rah, rah, rah for an hour and then you're done and you go home. Right. That's like the high school pep rally. And to me, all the cool pot smokers I knew, they weren't at the pep rally. They were in the dugout smoking joints. Okay. And they were thinking of much better ways to, get noticed, get on TV and whatnot.
If I can just throw a personal opinion, what I think a lot of it is people who are opposed to not just the cannabis industry, but these type of freedoms in general, typically, in my experience, come from religious structures, religious backgrounds and organizations, which have a very structured organizational sense about them. So, when there's
if you want to do an anti-pot rally, you've got a church that you can organize in, and it has a hall that you can do your meetings in, and you've got built-in people to give flyers to. You can use the religion to twist their arm to get them to show. I would only add to that statement that I completely agree with, that we're talking about apostate religions. We're talking about religions, particularly Christian ones, that are divorced from their actual true doctrines of the past and are floating kind of, unmoored right now.
Okay.
And the ones that want to dabble in politics, even though the Bible specifically says you're not supposed to do that. And you can't take that person seriously on a theological basis. You got to understand their power, and you got to understand what it is that they're saying about us. You're right. Those are the people who we're up against. You can't rebut them if you don't even hear what they're saying.
Right, and that's what the connection, what I was going for, was that it's almost like the people are there waiting for the message rather than the message trying to form the people. And in a sense, in the cannabis world, there's a message that we're trying to find people to get organized, whereas to me, messages that come through religious structures, the people are already there waiting for instruction or waiting for the message. Maybe the issue needs to be slightly changed from a PR standpoint, in the same sense of how do we find the structure? How do we get the people together and then they're there and ready to take action, so when the message comes through, it's better organized and better funded and better implemented?
The number one thing I've found that works is to have your strategy based around what your limitations are. For instance, as a rally organizer, I know that I am not allowed to advertise the Detroit Liberation Day event in the city newspapers or on the TV or on the radio, because what they'll say, no matter what my ad is that I'm endorsing or promoting the use of drugs. And that's not what I'm doing. I'm promoting a conversation about this issue. But it doesn't matter. If somebody smokes a joint at my event, which I have no control over, all of a sudden the event's just about a place to go to smoke a joint, which is fine, actually. I mean, that's what the D.C. smoking is in front of the White House. Everybody, has a place where they can smoke a joint before the march and the free concert. But because I can't advertise, I have to find a way around that. And what I've found is the annual event is how you get around that, where you don't have to tell people every year that it's the first Saturday of April or the first Saturday of May. Once they've gone once, they should know that they can go again. And once you have that organized, you can get people that are willing to commit themselves on an annual basis to the movement. Then you have your event, you know who's going to show up and speak, and you know who's going to show up and vend, you know who's going to show up and bring balloons or banners or food or whatever. You start putting together a community, and this is what we're missing is community. Now, as far as hope and getting over the apathy, what Dana Beal told me at the DC Smokin' was that people's participation in these events is directly proportional to their hope that something's about to change. This year in D.C., we have the medical marijuana going through with the regs that are going to allow vending of medical marijuana. So the attendance was up that year because people were buoyed, raised up by the success that was impending. Some places just have better manpower. I mean, Seattle, the entire West Coast, but Seattle Hemp Fest amazes me with their staff of over 1,000 free volunteers. We just don't have that kind of manpower in the Midwest. It does make it a lot tougher. And, in Nebraska, it's worse. Nebraska is a very red state, very conservative, Republican brainwashed state. Not only do you have the lower population, you have more pressure on that lower population to make them, more afraid to come out and get an event.
I'm looking on the website, curesnotwars.org, and I'm seeing more or less 3 or 4 kind of pivotal issues that it looks like your organization is basing itself on. Health and medicinal aspects, arrest and policing of drugs,
stop all cannabis arrest,
prison connection with what's going on there, and then wars on a big picture of how this industry from micro to macro is connected to the big world. Is that a fair summarization of what you're...
Like how the war in Afghanistan has brought back Afghan heroin into the market, and it's gone rampant. One of the things we also we have a multi-pronged approach to solving the war on drugs, getting this whole problem not legislated away, but solve the problem. We're going to solve it in spite of them instead of waiting for them to solve it. And really, you can boil Cures Not Wars down to a double-barreled shotgun approach, which is 1, return the safe substitute cannabis to its rightful place in society. Then you have the safe substitute to all the other hard drugs that people might want to take. And for those who still want to take the hard drugs and then get addicted and want to get off, we promote Ibogaine, which is an FDA-studied one-time treatment drug for addiction that instead of a maintenance drug, it's an antidote. And that's something we can talk about in a completely different interview because it's a huge and very important issue that we can only brush across in this point. But because we have the safe substitute, we have the holistic approach to solving the entire war on drugs. So anyone that's serious about ending the war on drugs is with us. And anyone that's not really serious, they get a little iffy about it. We have people that think that we can just legalize cannabis, and that's good, but you're still going to have the war on drugs even when cannabis is completely legal. You need to do something to solve the whole problem, or else people think, well, these potheads are just wanting something for themselves. They don't have anything for the rest of us that don't smoke pot. And we can say, no. Cures Not Wars has what you've been looking for all along, what your government knows is true, and what they've been withholding from you so that they could have this war on drugs for the last several decades.
That's actually what I was going to ask. You just answered was, are you covering this wide range of areas to specifically show everybody how it's connected versus just taking one topic? Any one of these topics you could create a separate organization of and go full time. But I like what you're saying, that to show the holistic part of how one is connected to the other, the big picture of what's what's going on in the world, all the way down to the individual who's getting sick, there's a connection all the way along the lines. I mean, if we took the word cannabis and replaced it with food, people would probably clap and applaud and praise you for being a well-rounded thinker and holistic healer in the world. But because we're talking about cannabis, it's almost conspiratorial. But it's not. It's not at all conspiratorial.
Actually, marijuana is the conspiracy word, so I would distrust somebody using that word instead. I should apologize actually for using that word so much myself, too. I know better to call it marijuana. Speaking about that for so many years.
Absolutely, and I'm in total agreement with that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the show's named the Cannabis Community Project, and we've done various news segments on it before, talking about marijuana, the word and its origins, and just in general controlling vocabulary. I mean, this is one thing that people who seem to gain power understand, is that language is powerful, and controlling language and vocabulary is crucial to controlling the issue.
To winning your debate.
Absolutely. And anybody that, whether we're talking about politics or anything else, I mean, the Frank Luntzes of the world pretty much understand this. Anybody that's in marketing, sales, or anything else, it's not just a random collection of words that we're using. There's very specific, it's a battle of language like anything else, because the way you describe something and the way somebody understands it, which affects their actions and their voting and how they live their life, comes down to the words we use. So using words like pot and weed and to me, anything other really than cannabis or something very specific along the lines of sativa this or whatever you're talking about, is only contributing to that bigger myth of what's going on out there. So I'm in agreement.
Part of my tour message, my Back with a Vengeance message, is not only that you can't have one without the other, but that if Jack Herer could go across this country and in the space of 2 years reintroduce the word hemp back into the dictionary, can we, in how many years, go campus to campus like he did and take the word marijuana, the word of our oppression, out of the English language? Not only do you have a better chance of winning your debate when you're not the one using racist hate speech in your debate, but it's also self-empowering. You're disconnecting yourself from the propaganda that was used against you. And again, the control of words is the first step in mind control. So we need to reverse that process, because they were on that first. Now we are following up and doing the cleanup on that. Now, another big part of my Back with a Vengeance message is we need to tie the antidote to addiction, ibogaine, with cannabis. It is very credible, scientifically proven reason why those two substances are connected to the point where they're basically sister substances. So that we can tell people that when the DARE program tells kids that pot's an addictive drug, they're lying, that pot is actually an anti-addictive drug. It's not a gateway, it's a gatekeeper, or it's a way back for those who went ahead and goofed up themselves on, crack or whatever anyways. One of the things that got us talking today was hemp, and so I want to touch upon that too.
Okay.
Now, I've been involved in hemp ever since, the hemp tour, of course, but my direct action in hemp was involved in helping Alex White Plume in South Dakota on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And when I showed up there on the way to Seattle Hemp Fest one year and saw what should have been an acre and a half of hemp all just stumped, cut off, and stolen by the cops, I realized that this was too much of an injustice to ever turn my back on, and I've been going there every year that I've been free since. I've yet to make my trip there this year. I'll be doing that on my way to Seattle Hemp Fest. So I've got at least 3 points. I got to go to Colorado, I've got to go to South Dakota, and I've got to go to Seattle.
Now, you're talking about specifically industrial hemp?
Yeah. For instance, in Nebraska, they're poised and ready to have industrial hemp, and their legislature just approved a university research bill, which was kind of a chicken crap move, really. The research is already in the history books, but they're going to do it, and maybe they'll go ahead and get themselves, a D9 decorticator and really, check out how new technology being applied is allowing farmers to process into fiber green standing hemp. That's revolutionized everything and, cut all the time and the weather conditions out of the equation. But in Nebraska, you can't go a quarter mile in any direction out in the country without running into a stand of hemp. And they poisoned it one year, and there's a group called Pheasant Unlimited. In Michigan, we have Ducks Unlimited. It's a similar kind of group. It's a conservation group for hunters. They conserve this species so we can go out there and shoot them. And they complained that the hemp was all poisoned, and instead of the pot smokers getting poisoned and dying, the pheasant all ate the seed and died. And so they forced the state to go back and reseed hemp, and now it's everywhere.
That's ironic and beautiful all at the same time.
Isn't that something? So that's the kind of crazy state Nebraska is. And Nebraska is actually one of the not-so-bad places to get busted with an ounce pot in. Just don't carry 200 pounds. There's farmers out there that are getting sick of waiting. They've got it growing on their land, and they're basically the court precedents have determined that if you allow that hemp to self-ret, if the leaves fall off of it and you wait till spring and sometimes midwinter and you go out and pick that, it's not considered marijuana cultivation and you're free and clear. They need to get into processing now. I've been slowly getting a feel for how much wild hemp can be harvested and how much encouragement it takes to make it grow even wilder so that you can have a decent harvest. And one of the things I've been doing for years was making paper. And I was making my own paper from the stems just from the pot I smoke. And that's part of my hemp display. I've got full sheets of that paper now that I've made some of it good enough to run through a printer.
Yeah, we're going to have to get you hooked up with the mad scientist. He's making paper and cloth from the cannabis sativa stock, not hemp stalks, but from the plant stock itself.
That the medical growers are throwing away, right?
Exactly.
So that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. I've always said, what if the Jamaicans took all their, stalks and started processing? They'd have a whole industry down there.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's doing.
This is what we need.
Using the cellulose waste, which it's classified as waste, so they can't do anything with it. They have to throw it out. And he's working to get it reclassified to reuse, because essentially that's what's going on, is we're just leaving money on the table and throwing an industry away. And it's almost ironic, and the hypocrisy is that usually the politicians to be the first ones to stand up and cry about the farmer and wrap themselves in the American flag and talk about the farmer and the heartland of America. These are usually the same people that are preventing these industries from emerging that farmers could take advantage of and actually become thriving farmers again. It's frustrating.
At least in Nebraska, it's not about family farm. That gets in the way. All they care about is the corporate, huge farm, the agribusiness farm.
Wow.
Hemp could actually turn that over. The thing is, the agribusiness could also, completely take over hemp and Walmart that to the point where no individual farmer could make a profit growing it. But at least the hemp would be growing. One of the things I did, too, was follow the hemp car on the hemp car tour back in 2001. And one of the things they learned about hemp seed for fuel, which I think is important to repeat here, is that hemp seed is too valuable for food to waste as fuel. So what I would say is if you want your biodiesel, you replace every use of canola with hemp seed oil so that you have a good hemp industry, but you take that canola oil, instead of putting that in people's bodies, turn that into biodiesel, because that stuff is nasty. I mean, half of the oil that you get from the field anyways is toxic, basically, to people. You can't put it in food. The other half isn't that much better, really, if you ask me.
Wow.
And it's everywhere. It's the number one seed oil product in the country right now, and the biggest in Canada, where it came from. And hemp is poised to completely replace that.
That's genius.
So the research is not necessary. The research is in the history book, like I keep saying about these research bills. So again, the only reason they're doing a research bill instead of giving the farmers the okay to grow in Nebraska is because they don't want to legalize for recreational use. And recreational use is the excuse then that they use to keep us from having the herb and the hemp. So we need to stop wasting our time going on these city by city and state by state medical bills. The next bills should be recreational or complete use only, because we're done with the baby steps. When we have enough states under our belt now, I mean, when I went to prison, 13 states were legal for medical. When I came out of prison, 23 states were legal for medical. And yet, with all this accepted medical use of cannabis, they haven't rescheduled it. So that tactic has expired.
Right.
It's time for us to have a removement, to remove the word marijuana, to restart the movement, and go for the whole enchilada now. Because if you can pass medical, I'm pretty sure you can pass the whole thing.
Absolutely.
And if you pass medical and you want to come back and pass the whole thing, it makes it a little harder for you because you've whittled away a big chunk of your support from people who don't smoke. And we need to understand, plenty of people who don't smoke still think we have a right to.
Right.
We don't need to make apologies.
I agree. There's two things I've told people, that they better hope life doesn't pass me success where I have disposable millions of dollars, because there's two things I already know what I'm going to do if I ever get a few disposable $1 million. One is I'm going to create a nonprofit law firm. It's called the No Plea Law Firm, where every case is taken for free on one condition: no plea, which means every DA has to take every case to the fullest. And number two is I'm going to put it into a PR firm that advocates alcohol for medicinal purposes only. I'm going to push those two issues until it either breaks me or breaks the bank of whoever. But either or, these are two issues that basically we need more money. We need more lawyers in the mix. We need more lawyers. Despite what people say about lawyers. We need more lawyers.
A lawyer's like an escort service. Sometimes you don't want to leave home without one. But the thing about lawyers, too, a lot of people, these kids don't remember that back in the days, we had guys like William Kunstler, who was the lawyer for the Yippies. They would kind of get paid where they could, but most of their work was pro bono work. They were doing it for the move, so what they got out of it was notoriety, and so they could get work anytime they needed. But it pays off to give is what I'm saying, I guess. And when you have a firm like that people who are dedicated to the movement, and maybe they'll only collect fees if they can sue the government and split the money with you kind of situation. But that organization you're saying should also have some very, very good attorneys who are experts on post-conviction law. Because a lot of these cases, you're going to lose the court case, but you go to a jury anyways because the real victory happens a couple years down the road in your post-conviction law. And a lot of prisoners have done some pretty amazing things to get their own freedom back doing post-conviction law without any help. So how much better can we do it for our movement if we have real lawyers on the outside helping these people? And then the other thing, too, is it's very important not to forget the people behind bars. When an activist like me goes down, you have to make that a point of protest. What you've got is a martyr, and that's one of the things that makes these judges and other people think twice about throwing us in jail. I mean, they threw one activist in jail, and 3 activists walked out. I've learned basically whatever they do to me, I don't have any fear anymore because I can still work for the movement no matter what they do to me, unless even if they kill me, if someone's going to raise a stink about it. At some point, that's the last thing you can do is at least remember that person and remember to complain very loudly and publicly that person is a cannabis POW.
Well, I think all people that we recognize and remember from history are simply those people who have done a sacrifice so great, for better or for worse, that it's something worth talking about and worth remembering. And there's something that's definitely prideful in the sense of knowing that maybe personally your life is destroyed for the rest of your life. I mean, you may never be employable or never really be out of the system or never have just a free weekend where somebody's not harassing you or you're under the thumb of, but that's you personally.
Every time you get pulled over, you're going to be searched for drugs.
Right. But there's a bigger picture going on. As you were talking about, lawyers that used to do pro bono. So even if they're doing it for personal selfish reasons, I don't care. We just need more lawyers because we're in a society of law. So the only way we're ever going to win any battle is to understand the law, being educated about the law, which is not an easy thing to do. So we need specialists. We need people that go and train to be specialists in the law and then that have the same ideology and politics to want to use that for the better good of society. It's the only way we're going to.
And I still insist that those people are out there. They just need to be found and recruited.
Right. Incentives. And I think sometimes maybe it takes a personal connection, but maybe not. Maybe it's just the right incentive where people finally say, yeah, sure, I'll get involved. Why not?
And basically every lawyer I've heard who got involved starts out saying, I got sick of defending these people who never should have been arrested in the first place.
Yeah. And maybe that's all you need. Organizations like yours and many others. Speaking of your organization, you want to give out some good contact information. So if there's somebody listening to us that maybe feels inspired or has some additional questions or would like to reach out to you, the best place where they can get a hold of you?
Sure. Well, the Facebook works pretty good for me, but my Facebook page, J-Day STATZER, STATZ as in zebra, ER, is basically just to point people to my YouTube channel. And that J says Cures Not Wars, all one word, on YouTube. Cures Not Wars itself is the main thing we want out of people to contact us about is if they want to help or organize a new location for the Global Marijuana March, which is always the first Saturday of May, or as close to it as you can get. And we've had up to 400 cities, but since Dana's been down and not able to help coordinate things, we don't know how many cities we have anymore, but there seem to be less. The thing is they're not reporting to New York and letting people know where they are and what they're doing and how things went. So that's the one thing. And you can go to the Cures Not Wars website, and it's Cures Not Wars with hyphens between the words, .org, and Dana at Phantom.com, who's Dana Beal, the founder of the organization, DANA at PHANTOM.com. He'll help encourage you and give you information you need, especially if you have somebody that you care about that used to smoke pot, but now they're hooked on meth or they're hooked on heroin and they're not so interested in pot anymore once you get those addictions going on. And so what you want to do is you want to save your friend, but you don't want him to be a 12-step fanatic who won't smoke pot with you anymore. So you take them to the Ibogaine clinic, which unfortunately at this point you have to leave the country to do until the FDA finishes their study. But there's clinics everywhere, and they're affordable. And then your friend will come back to you, and he won't have any desire for hard drugs, won't even have the same idea of them being something pleasurable. He'll have a more realistic view of what hard drugs really are. But he will be more than happy to smoke pot. And with some of these wonderful medicinal grades, he might even experience a little bit of an Ibogaine flashback, because that's how close pot and Ibogaine are as far as how they function. And again, we'll have another show possibly where I can completely unpack why pot and cannabis and Ibogaine and Iboga are sister substances. Suffice it to say for now, like I keep saying on my tour, pot is the anti-drug. And they called me a big fat liar on Channel 7 TV in Detroit for saying that. But when I told them that NIDA doesn't say pot's addictive anymore, and they went to the NIDA website, it said pot may lead to an addiction sometime, somehow, for some people, But if you look at what they say about heroin or crack or methamphetamine on the NIDA website, that's not maybe, kind of, sort of addiction. They say they are addictive drugs. You use them, you will get addicted. And so you either are or aren't addictive, just like you either are or aren't addictive. So all the double talk, all the stepping stone theory saying, well, you might get addicted to something else when you started out on pot. Hey, that's prohibition's fault. That's not pot's fault. We're not the creation or the cause of the drug problem in this country. We're the solution to it. We have the safe substitute. And now, if we all in this movement understand we also have the antidote to addiction, we're going to be an unstoppable political force.
Very good, man. That is exciting to hear. And I think I just want to confirm right now, when you come to Colorado, let's sit down and let's get into the Ibogaine and this specifically, because that's a huge can of worms alongside with a huge topic that I think many people are going to be interested in. So let's just confirm that and let people know that sometime over the next couple months, we're going to get into that topic with you, and we're going to learn. We won't even have to wait that long. The first week or the second week of August, I'm going to be heading west to go to Seattle Hemp Fest, and I'm going to stop in Denver. Okay. Because I want to visit you. I want to visit this guy who's making the paper. I also want to visit Colorado Rocky Mountain High Tours. And I also want to see a Colorado hemp field standing. I got to see what that looks like, because it's going to be about just the right time to see it. Excellent. Well, we'll have to make sure to document all of that. We'll go around, we'll record it and take some photos, do a few interviews. We'll kind of make a long trip out of it and put it together in maybe a couple shows, piece it together. Hey, that's what I love to do, video document. I mean, if it's not on video, it's like it didn't happen. Yeah. So all you people out there who like YouTube, go to my YouTube page, Jay Says Cures Not Wars, and help this old ex-P.O.W. out by subscribing to my channel. That subscription will help give me the support I need as far as your moral support. It doesn't cost anything, of course, to get more and more time. I got the ability to post 1-hour videos on YouTube in record time. Okay. So they must like what I'm doing on YouTube as well, so I imagine everyone else should like it too. And certainly, a lot of people looked at this and said, man, you're talking such sense. Everybody needs to hear this. And I've got what's on there right now as far as events like DC Smoke-In and Detroit Liberation Day and Seattle Hemp Fest. I've got about twice as much video still in the can that I haven't put online yet. So subscribe and you'll be the first one to see it when it hits the page. Excellent. So I know one good source for looking up activists, anyone that wants to do an interview or someone that mentions an activist you want to know more about them, there's a thing called freedomactivist.net. And it's kind of a who's who, and it also lists all the events and has some pretty good links to the history of the events and how they went in previous years. Very good, man. Cool. We talked about a lot. Well, thanks for the opportunity to get the word out, and hopefully, I can get some more stuff going where I'll just really have some mind-blowing information for people. Certainly the Ibogaine talk is going to be an eye-opener. Once I visit Alex White Plume and see how the Lakota hemp's going there, I can report on that as well. Yeah. Okay. All right, I'll feed it all to you through there. All right, thanks a lot, man. Take it easy. Thanks for listening to this week's show. Make sure to come back next week. We're going to have more guests lined up, speaking with dispensary owners, growers, business owners. Make sure to follow us on all of the social media, Facebook, Kush Common, Google+. You can listen to our shows live from the website or your preferred listening platform. Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spreaker, even YouTube, all under the same name, CannabisCommunityProject.com. We'll see you next week.